from Gay Times, alright? So the questions are going to be very homosexual.
Oh, good, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I didn't think woke culture could get more ridiculous, but here we are. We're gonna break down the latest Wicked-themed turn in woke culture and so much more on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, across the media, and across our politics, all from an independent perspective. First, we've got to talk Wicked, the new movie based on the musical that's making a huge splash and sparking so much cultural commentary. And over in the UK, prompted a trigger warning from the British Board of Film Classification. Yes, seriously.
The Wicked movie is everywhere right now. In fact, it's a huge moneymaker. Moviegoers just can't get enough of it. But in Europe, the musical is getting hit with trigger warnings. The British Board of Film Classification is advising audiences about potentially triggering moments of so-called discrimination. The board warns a green-skinned woman is mocked, bullied and humiliated because of her skin color, and talking animals are persecuted in a fantastical society. Critics on social media had a field day with that. One called it peak absurdity. Another said, this is how they are brainwashing your kids. Someone else wrote, even fantasy is dangerous to the censors, or maybe especially.
So I think this is pathetic and ridiculous. I mean, nobody needs a trigger warning that they're about to see green-skinned people be discriminated against or that animals are going to be oppressed. These are not things that actually need trigger warnings attached to them. I remember trigger warnings started as something specifically about PTSD and sexual violence and other things so that, for example, survivors of rape wouldn't have to watch unknowingly without knowing what they were about to see and having an opportunity to maybe step out of the room or whatever, scenes depicting sexual violence. But they've morphed into something totally different and totally ridiculous, where now, for whatever reason, executives and organizations seem to think that everyday people need to be coddled and warned about any possible little thing that might upset them. But no, it's on you to know what you're going to see. And I think most people going to see Wicked are in fact familiar with at least the broad contours of its plot. So the notion that people with green skin might face discrimination or that animals are being rounded up, these are things that are known and are Googleable. And if you are a person who is so mentally fragile that you couldn't handle those scenes being depicted without it being triggering or traumatizing, first, I mean, you shouldn't be going to the movie theater. You should be seeking remedial therapy and counseling because you lack the emotional functioning and resilience of a fully functioning adult. But second, then it's on you to screen the media you're going for. We don't need broad society-based trigger warnings. It's condescending and infantilizing and just turns all of this into a laughable joke. I haven't seen Wicked yet, though I have seen the musical and I liked it a lot. And I actually think it's an interesting piece. I don't agree with all of its political themes or messages, but some of it, including the discrimination against green people, which is clearly, I think, an allegory for racism, is interesting and thought-provoking. But no, it doesn't need a frickin' trigger warning. And when they do this kind of thing, especially kind of added alongside all the woke stuff that we're going to get into that's been a part of the press tour around this film, it just distracts from and discredits what, from what I've heard, is a pretty good film and piece of art that they've produced, and that's a shame for everyone involved and for the viewers. But can anyone possibly be defending this absurd trigger warning on Wicked? Yes, somehow some people are. And of course, The Guardian, that left-wing British newspaper, published a piece mocking people who have criticized the trigger warning and defending it. In the piece, writer Stuart Heritage wrote that Wicked's green skin trigger warning may feel silly, but not as silly as those crying woke. Yes, because the British Board of Film Classification issuing a trigger warning for Wicked isn't the problem, it's us noticing that and criticizing it that's bad. Very incisive commentary. Heritage mockingly writes that children need to learn that racism and animal abuse happens every day. They should be subjected to depictions of this without warning, especially if they're 5 years old and just want to watch a nice fairy tale movie with lots of lovely songs in it. In short, you cannot traumatize a child enough. And that's why it's clear that the real villain of this story is a polite little notice that someone put up on a website. How dare they? Well, it wasn't someone putting something up on a website. It was the British Board of Film Classification. And if you think that children who see Wicked would be traumatized, you've lost the plot. They would not be. And in fact, the themes of like racism or of scapegoating people like they do with the animals in the play, stroke movie, those would go right over a kid's head. So you don't need to warn them about it because they're not even going to know that that's what's really being implied. The same way that's true for all sorts of children's literature and books and movies that have themes that are broader or maybe for the adults to read into them, but they go over the kid's head. That's absolutely the case with Wicked. And it's on parents to know what they're bringing their kid for, so they should be doing some research about the things they're bringing their child to beforehand. They don't need trigger warnings for that. I feel like this is just reverse polarization. Conservatives don't like trigger warnings, and I hate conservatives, so I must defend trigger warnings. No matter how silly, absurd, and even counterproductive they may actually be. And that's the last part that I really think, with maybe the rarest of exceptions for things like genuine depictions of sexual violence, we need to just categorically abolish trigger warnings. Extensive research into them shows that they accomplish absolutely nothing besides insulting people and condescending to them, and in fact, may even heighten people's anxiety and make things worse. As BigThink.com reports, a Harvard study, which was a meta-analysis of other studies, showed that trigger warnings are fruitless and anxiety-inducing. They found that scientific evidence does not support the use of trigger warnings, which are described as a, quote, disingenuous gesture of trauma awareness. Gee, who could have ever guessed that that would be the case? Scientists analyzed 18 studies, and when these studies' results were pooled together, the researchers found that trigger warnings had no effect on subjects' emotional responses to the material, did not make them likelier to avoid it, and had little to no effect on participants' comprehension. So they accomplished absolutely nothing. They did, however, slightly increase subjects' anxiety prior to being exposed to the material. Oh, good. They made people more anxious while accomplishing absolutely nothing. What's not to love? Now, I do certainly agree with the guy from The Guardian that trigger warnings on the British Board of Film Classification's notices and attached to Wicked aren't the end of the world. It's not the biggest story of the day. I just find it laughable, amusing, entertaining, but also kind of disturbing. And I wanted to make the broader point that I really don't think trigger warnings should exist, because this is just a tiny bit that's part and parcel of a broader cultural movement towards infantilizing society, towards this kind of safe space culture, and all these other things that I think we need to push back on. But this is far from the only part of the wicked cultural phenomenon that has been infected by woke brain rot. The two stars, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, have done a press tour that has at times descended into absurdity, like it did in this interview with The Gay Times, which unfortunately is a thing that exists. Take a listen to this clip where they discuss how queer Wicked is, or something.
I'm from Gay Times, all right? So the questions are going to be very homosexual.
Oh, good, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Right in my wheelhouse. You know,
We're ready.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw this part, I knew that what was coming was going to be cringe. Just 100% certainty.
What I love about Wicked, and I think what a lot of people love about Wicked and this story, is that there are loads of queer allegories. From queerness and otherness with Elphaba and allyship with Glinda, which doesn't feel too far off your own personal experiences. So, so how does that inform your performances in this film?
I mean, Oz is just a celebration of uniqueness, and everyone is so beautiful in Oz, and I don't think it even is a conscious discussion. Yeah, everyone is just so beautifully queer, and that roots all the way back to the L. Frank Baum books, where, like, literally the most commonly used word in the books is queer. And Dorothy and her queer, lovely, beautiful friends. And, I don't know, it's just a celebration, and how do you honor that history?
Is Ariana Grande okay? First off, unless I'm forgetting something, nobody in Wicked is queer. Like, there are, fake, dumb, made-up category, but there are no gay or lesbian characters that I can recall. Secondly, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was published in the year 1900. So the reason that it used the word queer a ton throughout the text was not because it was a work of LGBTQIA2 spirit plus Wi-Fi password community, whatever, allyship. No, it was because back then, queer was routinely used as a word that meant strange or odd. It had nothing to do with queerness as Ariana Grande or Cynthia Erivo might understand that concept today. Does she not know that? I mean, I don't expect my pop stars or my actresses to be savants or sophisticated consumers of literature, but yikes, to have put all this work into this and still have such profound misconceptions about it is kind of embarrassing. Also, Elphaba is literally not queer. She's depicted as heterosexual, and her strangeness or oddness most closely parallels with race or racism, not really sexuality. Ugh, there's a lot more to come in this interesting interview.
Oz is a very queer place. Mm-hmm. So, theoretically, what do you think a pride parade would look like?
Oh my god.
One short day.
Yes.
It would look like one short day.
Okay.
For sure.
Every day in the Emerald City is a pride parade.
Oh my god,
right?
yeah.
I mean, look at like...
That's actually great.
But it's true.
Yeah.
Even like the chickens. Those
Snow
chickens
leopard with
are
the little
gay.
cape.
Oh, so what you're saying is everyone in Oz is
I think so, a little bit.
various.
Come on.
Yeah.
Why
Okay,
not?
I have to ask you, there are a select group of fans of L. Frank Baum's original works that do ship Glinda and Elphaba as a
bet.
couple.
Oh,
I
sure.
bet.
I think
what do you think?
Alfie is she goes wherever the wind goes. I think she loves Glinda. I think she loves love. I think it is.
I think
I
so.
don't think there's anything wrong with like celebrating the deep connection that both of them have.
Yeah.
Like they do have a real it's
True
a
love.
relationship. It is true love, which is probably why people are shipping it, you know, because what they build with each other is an unbreakable bond and love. You know?
And trust and truth and like just such a safe space for one another, which is what all relationships should be. So, you know, whether it's romantic or platonic or, you know, maybe Glinda might be a little in the closet, but if there were a time, maybe, you know, you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
Give it a little more time.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it is just a true love.
Yeah.
And I think that is like transcends sexuality. It's just kind of a deep safety within each other. And that's why they probably ship it.
Yeah.
So I thought this was kind of eye-roll inducing because not everything needs to be gay or lesbian or queer, and there's no textual basis for Glinda being closeted. Like, it's all just made up. And if anything, it kind of takes away from the really beautiful kind of platonic friendship that they have that is a key part of Wicked, that they are trying to make it a secret in the closet romance thing or whatever to placate the queer lit fan fictioners of the world. It actually doesn't need to be that. And not everything needs to be sexualized or romanticized when actually there are really meaningful, beautiful platonic relationships that can be impactful and powerful and complicated and nuanced. And I think that's what the relationship between Elphaba and Glinda is supposed to be about, not whatever they're trying to make it out to be here. The press tour that these two have done has been widely ridiculed because it is very bizarre. They can't stop crying in almost every interview. They're constantly touching and climbing all over each other, which, whatever, I guess, but it's all just a little bit odd. I, at least, though, am not really going to let it take the shine off the movie for me. I still intend to see it, and I hope I enjoy it. I'll let you guys know. But what do you guys think of all this? From the trigger warnings to the queer media interviews and beyond, are you on board with the wokeification of Wicked, or are you not a fan? Let me know in the comments below, and do hit that like button while you're at it.